Imagine building a dream together after years of struggle, sacrifice, and endless criticism. Imagine believing that you and your partner have finally reached a peaceful chapter of life. That was exactly the hope Jenny and Sumit carried in their hearts when they started talking about opening their own cafe. For them, it was more than just a business idea. It was a symbol of stability, independence, and a new beginning after everything they had faced on their journey together. Fans of 90 Day Fiancé know that Jenny and Sumit's relationship has never followed a normal path. From the moment their story first appeared, it was filled with shocking twists. Their love story crossed continents, cultures, and generations. Jenny left her life in America to move to India for Sumit. That decision alone showed how deeply she believed in their relationship. But their love story did not begin easily. Sumit had once hidden important truths from Jenny, creating one of the most dramatic revelations viewers had ever seen on the show. Despite that painful moment, Jenny chose to stay. She chose to fight for their relationship even when many people around them believed it would never survive. Then came the next challenge: family pressure. Sumit's parents strongly opposed the relationship for a long time. Cultural expectations and the large age difference between Jenny and Sumit created tension that lasted for years. There were emotional conversations, uncomfortable confrontations, and moments when it seemed like their relationship might collapse under the pressure. But somehow, Jenny and Sumit kept going. Eventually, after years of emotional battles and difficult decisions, they finally reached a point where they could move forward together. Their marriage became a turning point. For the first time, it seemed like the storms had finally passed. And that is when the idea of the cafe began to take shape. The cafe was supposed to represent a peaceful future. Jenny imagined a small, welcoming place where people could relax and enjoy coffee. She pictured friendly conversations with customers, warm smiles, and a comfortable atmosphere that reflected their personalities. Sumit saw the cafe as something equally meaningful. For him, it was a chance to build something of his own. A chance to create stability and show that the life he chose with Jenny could lead to success. In the beginning, the dream felt exciting. They talked about decoration ideas, menu options, and the kind of experience they wanted their customers to have. Every small detail became part of a larger vision. Jenny liked the idea of greeting people personally, making them feel welcome. Sumit imagined managing the operations and making sure everything ran smoothly. It sounded like the perfect partnership. But as the planning moved forward, reality slowly started to appear. Starting a business is never simple. Even the smallest cafe requires careful planning and constant attention. There are financial decisions, legal paperwork, equipment purchases, and daily operational responsibilities. At first, the excitement helped them push through these challenges. Each step felt like progress toward the future they had imagined. However, once the cafe actually started operating, things began to feel very different. Running a cafe is not just about serving drinks and talking with customers. It requires early mornings, long hours, and constant energy. Some days start before sunrise and end long after sunset. Jenny quickly realized that this new routine was physically exhausting. She had always been strong and determined, but adjusting to this lifestyle was not easy. Living in another country already required her to adapt to many cultural differences. Now she also had the pressure of running a business every single day. Sumit also felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier. As the person managing many of the business decisions, he knew that the success of the cafe depended on careful choices. Every purchase, every improvement, and every strategy mattered. And then there was the biggest question of all. Would customers actually come? In the beginning, there were moments of excitement. Curious visitors arrived to see the cafe and meet the couple they had watched on television. Some fans even traveled specifically to experience the place in person. Those days felt amazing. Jenny loved talking with visitors and hearing their stories. Many of them shared how much they had followed her journey and admired her determination. Those conversations reminded her why she had taken such a huge risk for love. But not every day looked like that. Some days were much quieter. There were afternoons when only a few customers walked in. During those slower hours, the cafe felt different. The energy changed. Instead of busy conversations and laughter, there was silence. Silence that left room for worry. Jenny sometimes looked around the room and wondered if the dream was slipping away before it even had the chance to grow. For Sumit, those quiet moments were just as stressful. He knew that every business goes through slow periods, but it was still difficult not to think about the financial side of things. Rent, electricity, supplies, and ingredients all cost money. Even when customers are few, the expenses continue. And when financial pressure appears, it often affects relationships. At home, the stress of the cafe slowly began to influence their daily conversations. It did not start with big arguments. Instead, it began with small disagreements. A conversation about expenses. A discussion about whether they should change the menu. Questions about how to attract more customers. Each of these topics carried emotional weight. Jenny sometimes felt that the dream they had built together was becoming overwhelming. She had imagined the cafe as a joyful project, something that would bring happiness into their lives. But now it sometimes felt like a source of constant worry. Sumit tried to remain positive. He reminded Jenny that success takes time. Many businesses struggle during their first year before they finally become stable. He believed that patience and effort could still turn their cafe into something special. Yet even with that optimism, the pressure was impossible to ignore. Their story had always been dramatic, but this chapter was different. This time the challenge was not about secrets or family opposition. It was about real-life responsibilities and the daily effort required to build something lasting. Jenny and Sumit had already proven that their love could survive emotional storms. Now they had to prove that it could survive the pressures of building a future together. And as the days continued to pass, one thing became clear. Their cafe dream was entering a difficult stage. A stage that would test not only their business skills but also the strength of their relationship. Because sometimes the biggest challenges appear not when a dream begins, but when reality starts asking whether that dream can truly survive. As the weeks passed, the excitement that once surrounded Jenny and Sumit's cafe slowly started to change. In the beginning, everything felt new and hopeful. Every morning they opened the doors believing that the dream they had talked about for so long was finally becoming real. The smell of fresh coffee, the sound of cups being placed on tables, and the quiet conversations between customers gave them a feeling that they were building something meaningful together. But reality has a way of testing every dream. Running a cafe is very different from imagining one. Behind the warm smiles and friendly greetings, there are endless responsibilities. Supplies need to be ordered, equipment must be maintained, and every detail has to be handled carefully. A small mistake can quickly turn into a big problem when you are running a business. At first, Jenny tried to treat everything like an adventure. She laughed with Sumit while cleaning tables and joked about how different her life had become compared to the quiet days she once had in the United States. But the longer they worked, the more they realized that this adventure required constant energy. Some mornings began before sunrise. They had to prepare ingredients, organize the kitchen, and make sure everything was ready before the first customer arrived. By the time the cafe opened, they were already tired, yet the real work had only just begun. Sumit took most of the responsibility for managing the business side of things. He kept track of supplies, handled payments, and tried to make sure everything ran smoothly. While he remained determined to make the cafe successful, the pressure on him was growing every day. Jenny could see it in his face. There were moments when Sumit sat quietly for a few seconds after closing the cafe for the night. His mind was clearly thinking about numbers, expenses, and whether the cafe was making enough to cover its costs. Jenny also had her own worries. Living in a different country had already required her to adapt to many new things. Language differences, cultural customs, and the distance from her family had all been challenges she faced for love. Now she also had the pressure of helping run a business in a place that was still unfamiliar in many ways. The cafe was supposed to make life easier for them. Instead, it was becoming a daily test. One afternoon, after several slow hours with only a few customers, Jenny sat down at one of the empty tables. She looked around the room quietly. The cafe looked beautiful. They had worked hard to create a warm and welcoming place. But empty chairs made the space feel much bigger than it actually was. When Sumit walked over, he noticed the expression on her face. She did not say anything at first, but it was clear she was thinking deeply about something. Finally, she spoke. She admitted that she was worried. Not just about the cafe, but about what the stress might do to their relationship. They had fought so hard to be together. They had survived secrets, family pressure, and years of uncertainty. She did not want their dream business to become the reason they started drifting apart. Sumit listened carefully. He understood her fears because he had been thinking about many of the same things. But he also knew that giving up too quickly was not the answer. Every successful business story includes difficult chapters. The real question is whether people have the strength to keep going. He reminded Jenny of everything they had already survived. There had been moments in the past when their relationship looked impossible. People had predicted the end of their love story many times. Yet they had continued moving forward. This challenge, he said, was simply another chapter. Jenny nodded slowly, but the pressure still felt real. The problem was not only about business. Their daily routines had also changed. Before opening the cafe, they had more time to relax together. They could watch television, talk about their plans, or simply enjoy quiet evenings. Now their schedule revolved around the cafe. Even when they were at home, their conversations often returned to the same topics. How to attract more customers. Whether they should change certain menu items. If they needed to advertise more. These discussions were important, but they also made it difficult to relax. Sometimes Jenny felt like their home had become an extension of their workplace. The stress did not stop when the cafe closed. Meanwhile, outside opinions continued to follow their story. Because their relationship had been part of a popular television show, many people still talked about them online. Some fans supported their cafe and wished them success. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether the business would last. Jenny tried not to read too many comments, but sometimes curiosity won. Positive messages made her smile. People wrote about how inspiring their love story had been. Some even said they hoped to visit the cafe one day. But negative comments were harder to ignore. There were critics who believed the cafe would fail quickly. Others said that running a business together might cause even more problems in their relationship. Those opinions added another layer of pressure. Still, there were moments that reminded them why they had started this journey. One evening a small group of tourists entered the cafe. They had heard about the place while traveling and were curious to visit. As they sat down and ordered drinks, the atmosphere suddenly became lively. Jenny began talking with them about their trip and their experiences in India. The visitors were excited to meet her and asked questions about her life and her relationship with Sumit. Sumit moved between tables, serving drinks and making sure everyone felt comfortable. The cafe finally felt busy, exactly the way they had imagined. When the group left, they thanked Jenny and Sumit warmly and promised to tell others about the cafe. For a few minutes after the door closed, the couple simply stood there smiling. Moments like that gave them hope. They reminded Jenny and Sumit that the dream was still alive, even if it was facing challenges. But the road ahead was still uncertain. Running a cafe requires consistency. One good evening does not guarantee success. The real test is whether those good moments can become regular. As the night ended and they prepared to go home, both of them knew something important. Their dream was no longer just about opening a cafe. It was about proving that their partnership could survive the pressure of building a future together. And the next chapter of their story would reveal whether they were ready for that challenge. The following days brought a new kind of tension into Jenny and Sumit's life. It was not loud or dramatic at first. Instead, it was quiet and slow, the kind of pressure that builds gradually until one day you realize everything feels heavier than before. Running the cafe had already changed their routine completely. Every morning began with responsibilities and every night ended with exhaustion. But now another challenge started to appear. The emotional weight of uncertainty. Jenny had always been honest about her feelings. When something bothered her, she usually spoke about it openly. Over the years fans had seen her cry, argue, forgive, and keep fighting for the relationship. That honesty made her story relatable, but it also meant she could not easily hide when she was worried. One evening after closing the cafe, Jenny sat quietly at the counter while Sumit finished cleaning the last few tables. The room was silent except for the soft sound of chairs being moved. Jenny looked around the cafe again. It was beautiful. The lights were warm, the decorations looked welcoming, and the atmosphere had the cozy feeling they had dreamed about. Yet something still felt incomplete. When Sumit walked back to the counter, he noticed her expression immediately. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Jenny hesitated for a moment before answering. She explained that she was beginning to feel the emotional weight of everything. The long hours, the financial uncertainty, and the constant pressure were slowly draining her energy. She admitted that sometimes she missed the simpler days when their biggest challenge was convincing people that their love was real. Back then their struggle had been emotional. Now it was practical. Sumit listened carefully, leaning against the counter as she spoke. He understood that the cafe had created stress for both of them, but he still believed they could find a way through it. He reminded Jenny that building something meaningful often requires difficult beginnings. Many small businesses struggle in the early stages before they finally find stability. But Jenny's concern was not only about the business. She worried about how the pressure might slowly change their relationship. In the past, their biggest battles had come from outside forces. Family objections, cultural expectations, and public criticism had all tested their love. But those challenges had also united them. They had stood together against those obstacles. Now the challenge was inside their daily life. The stress was coming from something they had created together. That difference made it feel more complicated. Sumit understood her fear, but he also knew that giving up too soon would mean letting the pressure win. He believed that if they stayed patient and kept improving the cafe, things could slowly get better. However, the situation outside the cafe was also starting to change. More people had begun talking about their new business online. Some fans were excited and curious. Others were skeptical, questioning whether Jenny and Sumit were prepared for the responsibility of running a cafe. Rumors started appearing on social media. Some people claimed the cafe was struggling badly. Others said the couple might close the business if things did not improve soon. A few critics even suggested that the cafe could create new problems in their marriage. Jenny tried not to read too many of those discussions, but sometimes the comments reached her anyway. Each rumor felt like another reminder of how public their lives had become. Sumit often encouraged her to ignore those voices. He believed that outsiders did not truly understand what they were going through. Running a business takes time, and people on the internet rarely see the full picture. Still, the rumors added pressure. One afternoon, a regular customer visited the cafe and casually mentioned that they had seen people discussing the business online. The customer meant no harm, but the comment reminded Jenny how closely people were watching their journey. Later that evening, she talked to Sumit about it again. She said she sometimes wished their life was more private. Living under constant attention made every challenge feel bigger than it actually was. Sumit agreed. Even though their story had become famous through television, they were still just a couple trying to build a normal life. The cameras and public attention had made their relationship well known, but it had also exposed every difficulty they faced. Despite the pressure, they continued working hard. They experimented with small improvements in the cafe. Jenny suggested adding new items to the menu that might attract more customers. Sumit focused on making the atmosphere even more welcoming. Some changes seemed promising. A few days later, the cafe became busier than usual. New visitors walked in, curious to see the place they had heard about. Conversations filled the room and the energy felt completely different from the quiet afternoons they had experienced before. Jenny moved between tables, smiling and talking with guests. Sumit prepared drinks and made sure everyone felt comfortable. For several hours, everything felt perfect. This was exactly what they had imagined when they first dreamed about the cafe. When the last customers left that night, Jenny looked around the room with a sense of relief. "Today felt good," she said softly. Sumit smiled. "Yes," he replied. "This is what we wanted." Moments like that reminded them why they had started this journey. Even though the challenges were real, the dream still had the potential to grow. But neither of them believed the road ahead would suddenly become easy. Running a cafe requires consistency, patience, and teamwork. One successful day does not erase weeks of hard work. The real challenge is continuing to improve while staying united as a couple. As they closed the cafe and prepared to leave for the night, Jenny paused at the door and looked back inside one more time. For a moment she imagined the future. A cafe filled with regular customers. Laughter and conversations filling the room every day. A life where the business finally felt stable instead of uncertain. It was still possible. But reaching that future would require something they had already proven they possessed. Determination. Jenny and Sumit had faced many obstacles in their love story. Each chapter had tested them in a different way. Some challenges came from family, others from secrets, and others from cultural expectations. Now the cafe represented the newest test. Not just a business challenge, but a test of patience, trust, and partnership. And as their journey continued, one question remained in the air. Would their cafe dream become the success they had hoped for? Or would the pressure of real life create a new turning point in their story? Only time would reveal the answer. The cafe continued operating. Jenny and Sumit slowly began to realize something important. The real challenge was not only about attracting customers or balancing expenses. The deeper challenge was learning how to stay emotionally connected while dealing with the pressure of building something together. During the first months, every day felt unpredictable. Some mornings started with hope, while other mornings began with quiet worry. Jenny would sometimes wake up thinking about the cafe before she even opened her eyes. Questions about the business followed her everywhere. Jenny moved between tables, smiling and talking with guests. Sumit prepared drinks and made sure everyone felt comfortable. For several hours, everything felt perfect. This was exactly what they had imagined when they first dreamed about the cafe. When the last customers left that night, Jenny looked around the room with a sense of relief. Today felt good, she said softly. Sumit smiled. Yes, he replied. This is what we wanted. Moments like that reminded them why they had started this journey. Even though the challenges were real, the dream still had the potential to grow. But neither of them believed the road ahead would suddenly become easy. Running a cafe